Hello and welcome to another identity management video coming to you from a galaxy far, far, far away. Today I'm really excited to show you the Microsoft Identity Stack. I'm going to start off by discussing what the problem is and the challenges that your company might be having and how the Microsoft Identity Stack will be solving them. Once we've done that, we're going to go on the user's journey from being created in an on-premise HR system to getting created in the on-premise Active Directory. They'll then get created in the Azure Active Directory, where they'll get assigned an Office 365 Mailbox, and finally we're going to create them in Workplace by Facebook. Okay, let's look at some of the problems and challenges your company might have. If you have an on-premise applications and no identity management solution, it means there's no automation, which means whenever a new user starts, the manager of that user's got to raise a ticket, and then somebody's got to action that ticket in their application. When somebody leaves the organisation, the manager needs to raise a ticket to say that this user's left and we need to disable their account. The problem with the leaver process is that if the manager doesn't create the ticket for a few weeks, or if the person actioning the ticket doesn't action it for a few weeks, it means that somebody who's left the organisation could still have access to your systems for longer than you might like. Another problem that companies have is that users don't have any way of self-serving. So there's no way for them to create groups or manage the membership of those groups, or there's no way for them to unlock their account or reset the password. And what they end up doing is having to call support and get them to sort it out for them. This is a waste of the user's time, and it also prevents service desks from actioning higher precedent calls, such as somebody who's got a broken laptop. When it comes to cloud-based solutions, the biggest problem IT departments have is keeping control. With software as a service applications, there's nothing stopping a user from connecting to the internet and creating a Dropbox account and using it collaboratively with other work colleagues. The problem is that this account is not managed by the IT department, but it could be managing privileged access documents. The other issue is that the users are going to have multiple accounts. So they're going to have an on-premise account, and they could potentially have an account for Dropbox or Slack or Workplace or ServiceNow. So how does the Microsoft Identity Stack help with these challenges and problems? Well, in the top left-hand corner we've got the Microsoft Identity Stack, and this empowers the user by giving them plenty of self-service capability. So it gives them the ability to self-serve for group memberships and creating groups. It gives them the ability to do privileged access management or to do self-service for applications. But it also does on-premise and cloud-based self-service password reset. So the Microsoft Identity Stack is giving you the ability to do self-service password reset on-prem or in the cloud, wherever your account is. The Microsoft Identity Stack also automates the lifecycle of your identities. So in the bottom left-hand corner we've got two authoritative sources. We've got on-premise HR and cloud-based HR. So in this instance we've got Workday. So the Microsoft Identity Stack doesn't really worry where your authoritative data is coming from. It's coming from the cloud or it's coming from HR, it doesn't matter. It will inbound provision the HR users into the Microsoft Identity Stack. Once those users are in the Microsoft Identity Stack, it can then outbound provision them to any application that the user needs to have access to. So on-premise, that could be Active Directory, it could be a door control system, it could be any other on-premise application that the user needs to have access to. When it comes to the cloud-based solutions, it can also outbound provision user objects there as well. It can create them in Office 365, it can create them in Workplace, LinkedIn for Learning, Zendesk, ServiceNow, the list goes on and on. The Microsoft Identity Stack is really powerful at getting you into those on-premise applications and into those cloud-based solutions. So this automation has given the control back to the IT department. They can now control what objects get provisioned where. So if a user needs to have their access revoked, they can do that, and if they need to grant additional access, they can do that. The user also has a better experience because they've got one account for their on-premise applications and their cloud-based applications. They don't need to remember multiple logins and multiple passwords, and it also enables single sign-on for the cloud-based applications. So now that we've seen the problems and challenges that your company might be facing, and we've discussed how Microsoft Identity Stack will help resolve them, let's see the Microsoft Identity Stack in action. So we're going to create a user in the HR system first. We're going to create a user called Han, and he's a developer. We're going to quickly just check AD to make sure that there's no Han Bassi in the system already. So we've got Anthony in, but no Han. We'll double check Azure AD as well. And again, just Ian and Ant. And finally, we'll check in Workplace just to make sure that the user's not sort of hidden away here. And again, there's quite a few Bassis here, but there's no Han Bassi. Now that we have the user in HR, we're going to use Microsoft Identity Stack to get the user into Active Directory. To do this, we're going to use Microsoft Identity Manager 2016. Microsoft Identity Manager 2016 is a bit like Lars Homestead from Star Wars. It's where Luke Skywalker grew up as a young man, and it's a moisture farm, so it's capturing the moisture out the air, which is used for drinking or for growing crops. Microsoft Identity Manager 2016 is very similar in that it's the foundation for our identity solution. It allows you to do outbound provisioning to connect to systems that users require access to, and it does inbound provisioning from your authoritative sources. MIM also provides on-prem self-service tools such as group management, password reset, and privileged access management. In my mind, Microsoft Identity Manager should mainly be used for on-prem applications. So if you want to connect to an internet-based application, then MIM might not be the product, and you want to look in the Microsoft Identity Stack for a different tool to use. That being said, if you've got an on-premise application that uses a web service, then that would be okay to use MIM because it's still on-premise and you're not having to connect to the internet to get to that application. If we now search for that user, we can see that user now exists, and we're just going to reset the password so we can log on with that account. Now that we've reset the password of the user, we can now log on to the Windows 10 machine to confirm that this account is working as we expect. I'm not going to wait for it to fully log in, but we can see that we've got the welcome screen here, so that's enough to tell us that it has worked. So now that we have our account in Active Directory, how do we get the account into Azure AD and get it at Exchange Mailbox? Well, we're going to use Azure AD Connect from our Microsoft Identity Stack toolbox. We are now going to log on to the Azure AD Connect box, and we're going to run the Delta Sync using PowerShell. Azure AD Connect is a bit like the Millennium Falcon. It's a heavily modified Corellian YT1300 light freighter, and it's been heavily modified so it can do the Kessel run in under 12 hours. It's also got a few other tricks up its sleeve. Azure AD Connect is heavily modified from MIM. It's the quickest way of getting users from Active Directory or any object from Active Directory to Azure AD. It's also got a few other tricks up its sleeve. So it's got the ability to do a reverse join, and it also manages the password between Active Directory and Azure AD. If we log into Azure Active Directory, we can now search for that user. So if we click on Users, and we can now search for Bassi, and we can now see that Han Bassi's here. So we'll click on him, and we can now see the attributes that have been set for the user. If we click on Groups, we can see that the user is a member of the All Bassi group. And if we click on Licenses now, we can now see that they've been assigned the Enterprise Mobility and Security E5 license and the Office 365 Business Essentials license. If we go back to our Windows 10 machine where we logged on as Han earlier, we can now open up a browser and go to the Office 365 website, where if we log in with our account, and we'll put the account name in here, and once we've logged in, we'll just open the mailbox, and we'll send a quick email just to confirm that everything is working as we expect. Okay, it's just logging us in now, and we'll select Outlook. And so we're just logging in for the first time. So what's happening in the background is that Azure AD Connect has created the account in Azure AD, and the license has been assigned to the user, and that has caused the mailbox to get created, which we can now sign in with. And it's just opening it, and we should be able to send an email now. So, and we'll send that. If we go back to the other server where I've logged in, we can see that we've received an email from Han, and I can reply. And if we go back, we can see that we've got the response there. So that's the Microsoft Identity Stack enabling a user on Premise HR to get an Active Directory account, and then to get an Azure AD account, and then to be assigned a license for a mailbox and be able to send and receive emails. Next, we want to create the user in Workplace by Facebook, but this could very easily be any SaaS application with a skin provider. We're going to go back to the Microsoft Identity Stack toolbox, and we're going to use the Azure AD provisioning service to create the user in Workplace. If we go back to the Azure portal, we can go back to Azure Active Directory and we can select Enterprise Applications. On the list here we should see Workplace by Facebook, and if we select that we can see some additional configuration that we can manage. So we can click on Provisioning, and this is where we configure the connection to the SaaS application, and when it loads up we can see that there's the ability to test a connection, and there's also some mappings. So we've got the test connection button there and the mappings here. If we select the mappings, we can see that it's enabled. We can see what object types have been, or what actions can be done, so create, update, delete, and we can see the mappings down here. So if you've seen Azure AD Connect sync rules or the portal sync rules, they're all very similar. The Azure AD provisioning service also gives you the single sign-on, and you also get the self-service application for users who wish to request access, who don't need it all the time. We now need to wait for the Azure AD provisioning service to run. As you can see, it's just completed, and we've got an email for the Workplace that we can click to go and activate the account. I am now going to use my final Star Wars reference, and that's that the Azure AD provisioning service is similar to Bespian Cloud City. Bespian Cloud City has many levels. The lower levels are used for extracting gas from the gas giant atmosphere, hence why they have the carbon freezing facilities. The higher levels are the more luxurious levels, and they're used by tourists. As we've seen, the Azure AD provisioning service has the heavy lifting provisioning service, but it also has those nicer features such as the single sign-on or the application self-service. Okay, so the invitation to Workplace has now arrived. So I'm going to click on it, which will hopefully open it up. And there's a Join Your Team button here. And when I click this link, what I'd like to try and do is to watch the URL, because what will happen is the single sign-on will occur when I click this link. So you have to be very quick, otherwise you'll miss it. So I'm going to click it now. And we're just going to watch that browser. And what it's done now is it's creating the account. So I can click Create Account. And it's linking the account that I've provisioned via the Azure AD provisioning service to the account I've just activated. And you can see that I've now signed into Workplace by Facebook. And if I want to post something, I can click on here and I can type Hello World Workplace, and I can post that as my new user Han, and that's now been shared. And if I go back and look at it as a different user, I can see that I've got my one notification, and I can click it and that will load the notification up, and I can now interact with it. And there we go. We can see the post from Han, and we can now respond to it. So in summary, we have now seen how the Microsoft Identity Stack empowers users, automates the identity lifecycle, and gives the IT department control back. We've got the Microsoft Identity Manager 2016, which is like the Lars Homestead. It's the foundation of our identity solution. We've got Azure AD Connect, which is the fastest way of getting objects from on-premise Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. It's as fast as the Millennium Falcon does the Kessel Run. And finally, we've got the Azure AD Provisioning Service with the provisioning service and the single sign-on and the self-service. It's got many different levels, similar to Best Be in Cloud City. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and see you again soon.